The world we know is ending. The world that's replacing it is a world with strange droughts, huge storms, rising oceans. And it's a world where inequality is no longer just a question of who has money. It's an ecological question of whom natural disasters are visited on and whose homes become unlivable. The world we're leaving behind, the world we're losing, was a short geological epoch called the Holocene. It lasted about 12,000 years. And the most important thing to know about the Holocene is that its climates were very stable. Stable climate is the perfect condition for building complex civilization. And people did. All recorded history took place in the Holocene. Those stable climates were the backdrop of everything we know that people have ever thought or said about politics or war, about love or beauty, about nature. And now that precious stability is gone. We ended it. We ended it with climate change, mass extinction, the transformation of the Earth's surface. This is why more and more scientists will tell you that because there's nothing in the world that we haven't touched and changed, from the upper atmosphere to the depths of the sea, that we've closed the book on the Holocene, and we've opened a new chapter in the planet's history, which we can call the anthropocene. That is very roughly Greek for the age of humanity, the time when people become the dominant force in shaping the planet. Now, there are many ideas about when we became a planetary force, when the Anthropocene began, maybe as long ago back as when agriculture began, maybe when Columbus reached the New World and created a truly global ecology for the first time. Most people say it was the Industrial Revolution, and a few hold out for the hydrogen bomb. But whenever we say that the Anthropocene began, we're in it now. And in the Anthropocene, the world we live in is the world we make. And that world's natural disasters, which are also humanitarian disasters, are partly on our hands, because they, like the rest of nature, are partly man-made. So we need to understand how we can get intentional about the future of the planet in a world like this. And here's one way to begin thinking about it. In this time, our economy makes our ecology. We shape the world just by the ways we live, the ways we stay warm and cool, the ways we get our food, the ways we move around or get shelter. Our energy economy, our transport economy, our food economy, these shape our ecology. In a sense, they are our ecology, just as much as rivers and forests are. So if economy shapes ecology, what shapes economy? Of course, part of the answer is technology, part is culture. But when you come down to it, there's one way to make collective, binding judgments about how we're going to live together and so how we're going to shape the planet. It requires political decisions. Decisions like whether to raise the cost of greenhouse gases and pivot the whole economy toward renewable energy sources. Decisions like whether to set aside large tracts of habitat for biodiversity. These are literally world-shaping questions. And they are the Anthropocene questions. So I hope that while you're listening to me, you're also beginning to hear a skeptical voice in the back of your head. And I hope that skeptical voice is saying something like this. Who is it exactly that's going to be making these Anthropocene choices? Where can I find them? Where can I talk to them? And if I were giving a certain kind of TED Talk, this would be the point where I said, it's us. right here in this room, we are the people we've been waiting for. But we aren't. And that's the crux of the problem. I said that these are political questions. And politics is a thoroughly artificial thing. Political decisions can happen only through the architecture of institutions like legislatures and courts. And from that strict, realistic perspective, there is no global humanity that can answer the Anthropocene questions. There's a huge gap between what we need to be able to do and where we are. And in this sense, talking about the Anthropocene isn't just talking about the evidence for a new geological era as a scientific matter. It's also an ethical and cultural challenge to begin building a political humanity that can answer the Anthropocene questions. And here I have a confession. I don't have, and I can't give you, 3 simple things you can do when you get home to save the world in the Anthropocene. There aren't simple things, and even saving the world is probably not the right way to talk about it anymore. But I do know what I want that might be what you want too. I want a world that's greener and more just and more democratic than the one we have, and more than the one that we're going to create if we keep drifting into the Anthropocene, into a world where inequality is written in the language of ecology on our landscape. If that is what you want, then I have a few requests for you, which are not simple. First, do everything you can for these 2 things: governments that are accountable to their people, and people who will hold those governments accountable for the harm that we do, but also because we can still create beautiful places and things. Second, do everything in your power to fight economic inequality, insecurity, and poverty, because those are hollowing out the social bases of the politics of solidarity and responsibility that we need to build. Third, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. Do not leave these questions to experts, because the questions are too important, and because it turns out that even when the experts are right, they're powerless without democratic energy behind them. One last thing. Keep in mind what you love most in the world. Keep it close, but also expose it, talk about it, make it public, because I guarantee you it is at stake. Everything needs a world to live in, and the world we get to live in will only be the one that we make. That is the Anthropocene situation. That is our situation. Thank you so much.